This is the news on NTA International, reaching you live from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Olajide Bello. Let's bring you the highlights of the news. Tension following conflicts between Hamas and Israel. Federal government to address issues relating to malnutrition in the country. Plus, missile attack by Russia on Ukraine continue to generate devastation ranging from loss of lives to infrastructural damage. A surprise attack by Hamas was launched against Israel early Saturday morning. Thousands of missiles were launched from the Gaza Strip into Israel by Hamas, causing huge destruction across Jerusalem. Khalil Mohammed tells us more.
Active scenes in southern Israel indicating the extent of the attack. In Gaza, people rushed to buy supplies in anticipation of days of conflict, while some evacuated their homes and headed for shelters. Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif announced the start of the operation in a broadcast on Hamas media, calling on Palestinians everywhere to fight. He said this is the day of the greatest battle to end the last occupation on earth, adding that 7,000 rockets have been launched. In retaliation, Israeli forces launched airstrikes and ground invasion of Gaza, and bodies of Hamas fighters littered the Shifa hospital in Gaza Strip. The last major hostility between Israel and Hamas was a 10-day war in 2021. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu assured Israelis that all the terrorists guilty of the recent attack, which killed many, will be made to pay. Khalil Mohammed, NTA News.
Earlier, Michael Freeman, Israeli ambassador to Nigeria, spoke to us on the development between Hamas and Israel via Zoom.
Today we've seen over 3,000 rockets fired by Hamas, and we've seen dozens, tens of dozens of Hamas terrorists break into Israel, infiltrate into Israel, and attack men, women, and children, and murder men, women, and children, and just slaughter them in their homes, slaughter them in their villages and in their towns. And we've seen a terrible, terrible day with over 100 Israelis murdered by Hamas terrorists. There's never a reason to murder women or children, but Hamas, that's what they believe in. They believe in murdering women and children. And so what we're seeing is this radical terror organization sending their death squads into Israel to murder as many civilians as they possibly can. They haven't given any reason. They just want to kill as many Israelis, to kill as many people, to kill as many civilians as they possibly can. People in Israel should follow the instructions of the government. The country is still safe in certain areas. You should make sure that people are close to their bomb shelters, that they listen to the instructions of the authorities that are there, and people will be safe. But over the next couple of days, Israel is going to do everything we need to do in order to make sure that our civilians and any Nigerians in Israel and anybody there will be safe. And we will take the actions we need to win this war and to take the actions to stop Hamas from carrying out these terror attacks. Well, at this point, this is a conversation. This is about us and Hamas. Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad have launched terror attacks. They have sent dozens of terrorists inside Israel in order to kill civilians. There can be no justification, none whatsoever, for the massacre of men, women, and children. You cannot justify it. No one should justify it. The world is condemning, and the world should continue to condemn the actions of these terrorists, and we will do what we need to do to protect. Look, we want peace. Israel has been very clear that we want peace. We want peace with all our neighbors, and we've seen developments in the last months, in the last years towards peace. People who've got relations in Israel, I have my family is in Israel. My father-in-law is currently sitting in a bomb shelter whilst rockets are flying overhead, whilst people are during the day have been trying to come in and attack him and his neighbors. I would say to everybody, Israel will protect you. We will do what we need to do in order to stop these terror attacks by Hamas. We will do everything to protect everybody inside Israel, because that's what a democratic country does when you're attacked by a bunch of radical terrorists.
The top U.S. and Turkish diplomats have spoken on the phone after U.S. forces in Syria shot down an armed Turkish drone. Washington said the drone came too close to its ground forces in Syria, but Ankara merely said it was lost during operations. During the war between the NATO allies, Hakan Fidan told the U.S. Turkey would keep targeting Kurdish groups. The U.S. works with Kurdish YPG forces in Syria, but Turkey views them as separatists and terrorists. Mr. Fidan told U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken that Turkey's counter-terrorism operations in Iraq and Syria will continue with determination. Missile attacks by Russia on Ukraine continue to generate devastation ranging from loss of lives, livelihoods and infrastructural damage, with more social structures needed to support sedentary life in hamlets like Haze in Ukraine. Details with Khalil Mohammed.
The last attack in Rosa swept away more than half of the village. In a burial plot next to a field outside the remote Ukrainian hamlet of Rosa, residents removed undergrowth and cleared away litter to make space for more graves. As dozens of people gather in the local cafe for a meal to honor a soldier who died in the war against Russia, a missile struck, killing at least 52 people. The war has killed more civilians and destroyed even more infrastructure, in contrast with deaths in the front line. Even though more social spaces have been turned into front lines as missile strikes happen on highways, schools, and residential areas, a missile once dropped at a busy intersection while civilians were trying to get home.
Russian military knew where they were striking. It was not a blind attack. People had gathered there for a memorial meal. Who could launch a missile at them? Only absolute evil.
It was one of the most deadly attacks during 20 months of fighting, and one that has devastated a small community. The people are shocked and grieved, and their minds are occupied with questions about how Russians knew about the gathering in Rosa. Residents say it was a deliberate attack. Among those killed was Olia, 36, who is survived by 3 children, and her husband died too. Her father, Valerie, was at the cemetery preparing to bury her remains and that of her husband. Ukraine has had the misfortune of more deadly attacks and loss of civilian lives, as most areas in its fold are inhabited by civilians who only engage in daily social imperatives, excluding military training and weapon handling. Moscow, on the other hand, enjoys the privilege of the UN Security Council membership, and it stands on the war in Ukraine, which is largely unsanctioned. Khalil Mohammed, NTA News.
Now, voters in Germany's largest state, Bavaria, will choose a new parliament on Sunday after a very nasty election campaign in which populist upstarts have rattled the status quo. The far-right AfD, tied in second place, is hoping for a big result. Its leaders say they are being physically attacked or threatened, but their opponents accuse them of twisting the truth for political gain by playing into a narrative of victimization. Days before the votes, Tino Trupala, the co-leader of the Alternative for Deutschland AfD, was taken into intensive care after feeling unwell during an election rally in Bavaria. The party describes it as a physical attack, and AfD supporters on social media are convinced that Trupala was injected with a toxin. Police are investigating, but so far say they have no evidence he was poisoned. Haze in Singapore is said to have reduced the air quality to unhealthy range owing to increased smoke from wildfires. Health officials say this situation calls for serious concern. Khalil Mohammed reports.
Singapore's air quality fell into unhealthy range on Saturday, Official readings show that as increased forest fires from neighboring Indonesia brought haze to the city-state. The 24-hour pollutant standards index reading in the eastern and central part of Singapore were above 100 levels, and people are advised to reduce prolonged strenuous outdoor activities. Transborder haze is a perennial problem in Southeast Asia as regulatory loopholes make it hard for authorities to eliminate Indonesia's slash-and-burn land clearing practices.
What we would want is to put in place the best practices to ensure that we protect biodiversity and other farms, because escape fires do also threaten other farms, because when a fire escapes and you have no control over it, you can damage communities and people's lives.
The main scourges of slash and burn are habitat destruction, erosion, smoke, rapidly falling productivity, and increasing pests in short fallow systems. The haze travel to faraway lands, causing problems for regular environmental homeostasis, thereby making natural cycles operate inefficiently, leading to reduced natural efficiency and outcome.
Strict rules and guidelines that we abide by, for example, zero use of pesticides, chemicals, and the use of fire is controlled.
Today, slash and burn is used at considerably higher frequencies than in the past and in larger areas, causing concern that biodiversity is negatively affected as well as the general ecosystem. Kolo Muhammad, NTA News.
Away from environmental hazards, a member of parliament in the Democratic Republic of Congo and owner of strategic mining company has been sentenced to death by the military court on charges of participation in the M23 insurrectionary movement in treason. In August, the prosecuted had requested life imprisonment for Edward Mwanga-Chuchu, elected representative of Masisi in the province of North Kivu, Eastern DR Congo. The highly military court did not grant any mitigating circumstances to the convicted man who was not present at the pronouncement of the sentence. General Robert Kalala, presiding judge of the High Court, said he was found guilty of illegal possession of weapons and ammunition of war, participation in the M23 insurrectionary movement in treason. Reports say the M23 for March 23rd movement is predominantly Tutsi rebellion group, which, with the support of Rwanda, has seized vast territory in North Kivu since the end of 2021. Edward Mwanga-Chuchu was arrested on March 1 in Kinshasa, held first in Makala, the Congolese capital's main prison, and then transferred to the Ndolo military prison, where about 30 hearings of his trial were held. The death penalty is often pronounced in the DR Congo, but has not been applied for 20 years and is systematically commuted to life imprisonment. The government's actions on climate change without commensurate inputs from its people and team players, it is believed, may not advance climate mitigation efforts and adaptation. And so, at a meeting of the Minister of State for Environment with the government of the Netherlands and African climate activist partnerships, the Minister, Isaac Salako, emphasized is central in the battle to restore the climate. Charles Alpha reports.
For the past few years, the governments of the Netherlands and partners, Oxfam and some climate activists have committed resources to fighting climate change in 8 African countries, including Nigeria. However, the concern is the gap that exists on the table where key climate decisions are made without much inputs from Africa. This meeting with the Nigerian government through the Ministry of Environment is to find ways the government will amplify Africa's story and build her capacity to take the right climate decisions with the interest to empower women and children.
We want the ministry to adopt and take the climate change caravan as her own, as a yearly event that will bring youth, children, people in the entertainment industry to talk about the realities of climate change.
There's no doubt that in Nigeria,
Minister of State for Environment, Isaac Salako, believes engaging all stakeholders in the climate space will have far-reaching outcomes in this regard. The problem of insecurity, he emphasized, is traceable to the impact of climate change on livelihoods.
The effect of climate change on health is very, very major. And I'll be very happy to come on board with you, to join you in ensuring that we try to bring to the fore that particular angle of climate change. I want to sincerely appreciate the government of Netherlands for the support that you are giving the African activists for climate change, particularly for some of the things they are doing in Nigeria.
While restating Nigeria's commitment to their common cause, the ban on exportation of charcoal, which has now been lifted, he said was merely to increase capacity for regulation and will not have adverse effect on efforts to fight climate change. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
You're watching the news on NTA International. We'll take a short break. More news in a moment. Many thanks for being there. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture is determined to address issues relating to malnutrition in the country. This is coming as the International Food Policy Research Institute and Harvest Plus strategize to assist the government in achieving its objectives in food security. Musa Aliu reports.
Latest figures indicate that Nigeria is among countries in West Africa with substantial number of malnourished children. This is attributed to the displacement of rural communities as a result of climate change and conflict. Environmentalists say accelerated changes in climate are significantly impacting crop yields, macronutrient content, and food prices, making it more difficult for farmers to produce food. Harvest Plus and the International Food Policy Research Institute say there is the need to get all state governors to inform them about the development going on in food-related issues, including biofortification.
The main thing is a coordinated roadmap that can really help take some of these reforms and make them practical. Another aspect is that we've had some very positive shifts through the National Agriculture Technology Innovation Policy and the climate change strategy. How can we bring these policies into a joint reform roadmap? I think that is the main aspect.
Biofortification, a process of involving the breeding of staple crops to include high levels of macronutrients such as iron, zinc and vitamin A, offers a promising solution to address the rural challenges of climate change and malnutrition.
Developing the varieties from the research institutes, ensuring that early generation seeds of those varieties gets to the conventional seed companies. The conventional seed companies multiplies it into certified seeds. Agro dealers are linked with these conventional seed companies through various distribution channels for them to get the seeds to the farmers from the communities.
In the meantime, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security says the ministry is planning to introduce a food and nutrition program for rural farmers and schools. Musa Aliyu, NTA News.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is to chair the first National Agriculture and Food Security Summit scheduled to hold in November 2023. Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Abubakar Kyari says the summit is essentially programmed to enlist the interest and support of all the actors in Nigeria's agriculture and food security space in our bid to create the future of affordable and safe nutritious foods while focusing on farmers' welfare. President Tinubu is expected to make specific declarations and outline the expected call to action for all the stakeholders with clear metrics.
All these challenges require not just a change in tactics and approach, but injection of new knowledge, innovation, skills, techniques, technology, and value orientation. Furthermore, climate change is now a very high impact and high likelihood event, and we need to mitigate and plan for it if we're to guarantee sustainable food and nutrition security for Nigerians. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR has demonstrated total political will to transform the agriculture and food security of our dear country by not only changing the name to Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, but also making food security the #1 presidential priority of its agenda. I therefore want to assure all stakeholders that the issue of political will as an impediment to policy actions is now a foregone issue.
Reports across the country indicate that dust in the atmosphere is gradually disappearing with improvement in both vertical and horizontal visibility. Musali reports that the sudden change in the weather for the last 3 days is leaving behind questions in the minds of Nigerians, especially farmers.
The rainy season is not over yet in most parts of the country based on the 2023 seasonal prediction of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET.
It's also probably the timing in terms of the rain. Sometime a couple of years ago, we've seen by now the rain that stopped, or rather a certain threshold we're looking at probably reduced. But we're seeing an everyday reinforcement, as I'll put it that way.
However, the sudden change in weather in the last 3 days is raising questions as to whether or not the season is over. The confusion was more when the rain which accompanied the weather was not as clean as the normal rainwater. In this compound in Suleja, a lady showed me the rainwater she collected from Friday evening's rainfall. Residents of the Federal Capital Territory and environs also witnessed a similar situation.
At about early hours of day before yesterday, it was as if dust was coming in from all corners of the town, and the visibility was becoming changed, becoming darker a little and dull, as if it was going to rain and there was no rain.
Nigerian Meteorological Agency says the 2023 rainy season will last till the first week of November in the north central and to December in the coastal cities. Musa Aliyu, NTA News.
Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund is re-strategizing to ensure victims of workplace accidents, illness and death get the desired compensation as moral booster for the labor force in the country. Managing Director of the Trust Fund, Maureen Lagoa, says this is part of the organization's drive to key into President Bola Tinubu's thrust to improving workers' well-being. Joseph Utsen reports.
Beneficiaries of the Employee Compensation Scheme cut across the public, private and the informal sector.
Yes, we can.
With their organizations contributing 1% of their emoluments to the scheme, they are entitled to all workplace hazard compensations. Marking this year's International Customer Service Week, the custodian of the Social Safety Net Scheme took the sensitization to the public.
People in course of their duties in the office sustains one form of injury or the other. As we speak, we have thousands of persons, employees that are being taken care of as we speak today through this organization.
By participating in this event, it will enhance team service, productivity and resilience.
We must be able to deliver on time, be able to do our work in such a way that the customers are happy. And that means that we deliver on time, we take care of their needs, we meet them at their point of need.
3.
With this year's theme as Team Service, the Trust Fund rounds of the week with encouragement on staff to be more supportive for better delivery. Outstanding staff were recognized as moral booster. In Abuja, Joseph Utsen, NTA News.
The Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Shuaibu Audu, has reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to completing the Ajaokuta Steel Company and the National Iron Ore Mining Company in Itakwe. The minister made these remarks during his 3-day working visit to the companies in Kogi State. Correspondent Solomon Ayedeng reports.
Those two major components of steel production, Ajaokuta and Itakwe, has not been working since inception. more than 40 years ago. We are here to try to change that narrative by the special grace of God.
Concerned by the inactivity at the National Iron Ore Mining Company in NTAi, Kogi Central, following the cancellation of the concession agreement in 2008 and the resulting challenges, including the loss of skilled manpower, inadequate funding, and security issues, the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Shuaibu Audu, visited NTAi to assess the situation firsthand.
The plant as it is has been without use since 2008. So there's been a lot of depreciation.
If we don't stick at government another 25 years, what are we waiting for?
In addition to engaging with management of the dormant company, the minister took time to tour the mining sites and other installations at the National Iron Ore Mining Company in NTAi. While acknowledging the substantial government investment in the company, the minister expressed confidence in the 8-point agenda of the renewed hope mantra of the federal government, which is focused on industrializing the country. He emphasized that this agenda will ensure the completion and inauguration of the Ajaokuta Steel Company and the Iron Ore Mining Company in NTAi. This, in turn, will expedite steel development, leading to job creation, poverty alleviation, and attracting direct foreign investment into the economy.
We're going to write a budget, the budget that would be hopefully approved by the National Assembly and ultimately signed by Mr. President, would have a provision for us to upgrade some of the production plants in Ajaokuta Steel to enable us produce the components of the gas cylinders that will be used for the CNG buses.
The minister urged the staff, management and other stakeholders to remain committed, assuring them that the federal government will not falter in this endeavor. In NTAi, Kogi Central, Solomon Ayedehi, NTA News.
And next is the weather prospects for Sunday. That's the news on NTA International. Thanks for watching. I am Olajide Bello.